Hey everybody, it's James Vagley. Welcome to another episode of the MBA podcast, and it's episode 188. It's case study time of the month. And before we introduce and talk about the case study, I've got the man in the black corner, Ash Playsted, looking as dapper and sophisticated as ever.
Dapper, sophisticated, obsessed, and loose. That's me.
Before we started recording, listeners, the title of this episode is a case study, a deep dive obsession with personal productivity, getting more done with less. And I said to Ash, look, obsession in a good way. And then our conversation slid down from there into those sorts of areas. You calling me loose, you calling me obsessed, in a nice way.
Couldn't help myself, James. Listeners, you got to have a laugh. No, looking forward to this one, James. I'm super well. Hope you're well too.
I am. Listeners, you too. So this month we've been talking a lot of things productivity and productivity hacks. And if you've missed those last few episodes, go back and have a look. There's some great techniques and strategies and hacks for you to use. And this is scratching the surface, right? This is a huge topic. It's an area we spend a bunch of time working directly with our members in our advice sessions, our coaching sessions, in a lot of our live events. We dive into this area. We understand that getting the most out of you is essential to get the most out of your business and the results you want. So this runs deep at big. So before we get into it, as always, if you like this podcast and what we put out for free, imagine what we do in our paid programs. So jump over to our website, dozens of case studies of brokers like you, business owners that are doing amazing things. And we may have a few openings available at the time of this going live. So go over and book a chat with our team. It's the Let's Chat button, and you'll have a chat with one of our awesome team about how we might be able to help and work with you on not just productivity stuff, but building your business in general. So that's, of course, where the rubber hits the road, the work we do with our members. But for today, this case study, listeners, sometimes we case study and talk about a member. Sometimes we use our own experience as case studies. If you go back in the episodes, there's been case studies with me and with Ash. And this month, it works perfectly to sort of interview Ash a little bit in this space, because he'll explain in a minute that he's been obsessed in this space for quite some time, and in a really awesome way. And that's one of the things he's super passionate about is productivity, peak performance, mental fitness, getting the most out of you in order to get the most out of your business. So we don't know where this episode's going to go. It's just going to be good. And maybe, Ash, I can start with a question about, when did this start? When did this, I'm going to keep calling it an obsession in a good way. When did this obsession with maximizing your own performance, mental fitness, productivity, peak performance start for you?
I'm happy for you to keep using the word obsession, James. I'm just curious as to when you're going to throw in and call me loose, but we'll leave that to
give it a few more minutes.
Now, seriously. So look, a really interesting question. And, as you said, I've been at this caper for, pretty much 40 years now. So these are things that you don't suddenly, figure out overnight. There's a lot that goes into this, but to your question about when the light bulb probably went on, it's not that I noticed it go on. It's probably I noticed it in hindsight. And I've spoken about this many times. We've talked about this many times. That time in my life when I was being what I thought was super productive. And that was the time when I wrote a lot of loans. It's commonly known, I wrote a lot of loans, 1,000 loans over a few years, working long hours, late nights, obsessively, based on my understanding of what productivity was. And my understanding of what productivity, without even naming the word, was, just keep flogging yourself to see what happens, right? Basically. And it got to the point, as listeners who've followed this podcast might know, is it got to the point where I pretty much exploded. As I picked myself up and kept going, I came to the conclusion there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a way to feel good about yourself, to grow a business, help your customers without it being based on constantly expanding the amount of effort you've got to put in. So I guess you fast forward that, now I've really developed a conscious awareness and focus on productivity shouldn't be based on constantly expanding the amount of effort you put in, right? It can't be, because that has, well, for starters, that's a zero-sum game. You're going to get to a point where you can't put in any more hours. Then what do you do? And secondly, it's not good. It's not healthy, physically, mentally, spiritually, family-wise. You might make money, possibly. And I know a lot of brokers, listeners, maybe you're one of them, but I know a lot of brokers who would call themselves productive because they settle a lot of loans, but there's other parts of life that are sacrificed. So I guess it's then going, okay, if that was the old fashion of productivity, constantly working hard, constantly putting in long hours to produce some sort of vague notion of success, versus productivity as I see it now. And productivity as I see it now is based on what is the result I want and what's the minimum amount of effort I need to put in to get that result. Right. So you're listening to this, listeners, right? And you're going, what's he talking about? Minimum amount of effort. You know, are you lazy? Yeah, probably. Right. But it's not about being lazy or not being lazy. It's about understanding what is it I'm trying to achieve? What are the actions I need to undertake to get those results, and then getting them done in the minimum amount of time that you need to. That's it. So for me, that's productivity. Productivity is something that needs to be measured against a benchmark that you've set, not some open-ended, vague notion of constant expansion of effort. Because people talk about expansion. I'm a big believer in expanding as a person, but that shouldn't involve expanding the amount of hours you have to put in to continue to be productive. That's the opposite of what you should be doing.
Yeah. What's the quote? I think it's Kerry Packer that said, anyone that pays more tax than they have to is what, a mongrel or a bloody idiot? What was the actual? I'd love to know the actual.
I'm sure there was an F-bomb or two in there with Kerry.
Yeah. Like anyone that pays more tax than they need to is a bum. No, that's a Bob Hawke quote about anyone that, after they won the America's Cup. But I digress. It's the same thing. Anyone that puts in more effort than they need to get a particular outcome, is a fool. Like, if you could pay less tax, and we're talking, the above board, always legally, paying your share based on the rules. If you're giving more than you need to, according to Kerry Packer, you're a fool. So it's like, in a way, what you're saying, Ash, is if you are gunning for a particular outcome and whether you get to that outcome one way or the other, you'd be a fool for doing it the hard way if you could have done it an easier way with less time and effort, right? That's kind of what you're saying in a way.
It is. And I also often tell the example of, mortgage broker productivity as I see it versus bank employee as I saw it. No offense to you bank employees out there. A lot of my good friends are bank employees. But I used to always explain to customers, why would somebody deal with you when they could deal with the bank? Now, amongst the many reasons, right, product and choice and everything else, was also what I would call productivity. When people deal with a good broker, they get a whole bunch of things: communication, choice, et cetera, impartiality, but they also get extreme productivity. Because guess what a broker wants if you're smart, right? Is you want to get paid the maximum income based on whatever the customer wants in the shortest time, right? Why would you work 1 minute more than you have to in order to get that outcome? You're not picking up a paycheck. So brokers bring a focus on productivity, which is, how do I get the outcome for this client in the minimum amount of time possible without shuffling papers around my desk to justify my existence, right? Which is what happens in a bank. No offense. Maybe there's a little bit of offense, right? Maybe just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
I'm an ex-bank employee, so hard with the same brush. But that's not any individual's fault, right, James? That is the culture of the bureaucracy of big business. Is a lot of people can hide in there and be very unproductive and still pick up a good paycheck because they just expand work out to fill the time available for its completion. That's a great, famous quote. I'm glad that I recalled that because that really is the opposite of productivity. Expanding the amount of work you've got to get done to fill the time available to get it done. Brokers, we're the opposite. We shrink the amount of time, we shrink the amount of work to get it done in the shortest amount of time possible so we have the rest of the time off to do something else.
This is true. Assuming, of course, that, and this opened up a can of worms, but most people bring that baggage to being a broker and they don't think that way. They sit there 9 to 5, shuffling papers, being busy and feeling important and getting things done. But are you getting results? Are you getting results for your customers? Are you getting results for you in the easiest, fastest way possible? We see a lot of inefficiencies in the broking world, not because of inefficient process, and there's a lot of that too, but inefficient thinking, which is, let's dive a bit further into this, Ash. So obviously it started because of, personal need. You obviously became successful and recognized that there was probably a better way. What sort of things have you, maybe there was a particular thing that you got into first? Was it a particular thing that sparked your interest? Maybe some of the key things that you've tried and investigated over the years. If we could pick out some of the gold ones.
Yeah, it's interesting. And look, hardship is a great teacher because it forces you to be introspective and to look at the way you're doing things, right? Hardship and difficulty forces you to do that. And I'm no different. Like most people, we just roll along with the status quo unless it's knocked over, and then we're forced to find a better way, right? So I was a bit like that, rolling along. And it forced me to step back. One of the things that happened at the same time, well, actually it happened a little bit earlier, but the lesson only really resonated at this time. And I've mentioned this before. I mean, one of the things that I was into at the same time was technical analysis, trading, the financial markets. Now, without, going into that topic, because that's not what we're here to talk about, is what that forced me to do at the same time was to deep dive into human psychology and human behavior and why we do the things we do. Because I wanted to know, why am I being such an idiot? Why am I doing these things which are against my better judgment? So I learned a lot about human behavior, impulses, why we react under pressure the way we react, why learned behavior combined with biological impulses, can either be your friend or your enemy. So all of this combined at the same time for me really to understand myself. And I would argue very, very strongly that the most important thing that any of our listeners can do is self-awareness. Understand yourself, understand why you act the way you do, because it's the greatest lesson you'll ever get. And it's something that I think can then be brought back to everything else you do. So that then led me to thinking, well, okay, I know a bit more about myself. How can I maximize my results without compromising who I am as a person, right? And then that came over to business, right? And then it flowed into all of the things in business, which is build a team, build systems and processes, document things so that I can work less. And it took me quite a while to become acclimatized to that, James, like that, breaking that obsession that I had, that I reckon a lot of our listeners would have, that our worth as a person was tied to how busy we were. I would ask everybody, I would challenge everybody listening to this to answer one question. When someone asks you how work's going, what word would you use to summarize your response? I would estimate 90% of the time the word busy is in there. Why do we feel the need to justify ourselves by saying we're busy? All right? So just think about that. So I really went on this process of establishing new work habits. Meditation became part of it. Nutrition became part of it. Exercise became part of it. Resilience became part of it. And training myself to accept that I don't need to be busy to be productive. I don't need to be busy to be valuable. I don't need to be busy to be seen in a certain light by other people. All right. All of these things I worked on with some help. I engaged mentors. I still do to this day. Like I have been engaging paid coaches and mentors for 25 years. You know, none of us know all of this stuff from a standing start. We need help. So that's number one, almost at the top of the tree, James, is get somebody and pay them who can help you on this journey to understand yourself and how to be productive without working harder. You know, and that's really where it all crystallized for me. And obviously then I went on to great success in business because I figured out I don't have to be working long hours to feel good about myself. I just had to be productive. So what did productivity mean? It meant here's the outcome me and my team want. Here's the behavior we need to undertake to get it. If we get that done in 2 days, when we've given ourselves 3 days, do we suddenly give ourselves more work to do on a third day? No, we'll have the third day off. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Clarity of outcome is key to everything. I want to touch quickly on, because you mentioned self-awareness as one of the key things. And I don't want to sort of hit you with a big how on that one because there's lots, right? But maybe if someone is sitting there and goes, well, okay, I need to start self-exploration and becoming more self-aware. What would you recommend they do? I mean, other than working with someone, getting, some help, etc. How do you begin to be more self-aware when you're used to not?
It's a good question. And look, you probably see behind me here, right? I've got, I don't know, 1,000 books. There's probably 250 of them sitting around me. Probably 200 of them are around psychology, human behavior, anthropology, those sorts of books that speak to human behavior, right? So I've been a voracious reader and studier and researcher of human behavior. One, because I'm really curious about why humans behave the way they do. I think that's a fantastic tool to have in your toolkit when you're dealing with people. And then, of course, it's a fantastic self-awareness thing because you start to read this stuff and you go, oh, that's me. Oh, now I understand why I behaved or, I was impulsive. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with me. It just means, hey, I'm a normal human being. That's what nature gave us, this impulsive biology that was evolved to keep us safe from danger, right? So all of these things I learnt through reading and deploying into my life. But if somebody wanted to accelerate this learning, I go back. It doesn't have to be us. You need somebody, a great mental fitness type coach, to take you on this journey and guide you through it. Like, I think if you did that for 6 months to a year, that would be the equivalent of what took me 10 years doing it myself and figuring it out, right? So really getting a mentor to take you along this journey and guide you, as well as the reading and the personal experiences, is the most important thing. It's a team sport. It's not an individual thing. Get help.
Get help. Yep. You do have a few books behind you there. So this is kind of like asking a movie buff what's their favorite movie, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Is there a book on that wall that you would instantly pick out and go, read this?
Oh, there's about 100, but I just picked one
I know
out.
that about 100. What's that? Human Evolutionary Psychology. That's a book that I've never seen before. Probably no one else has. Tell us about it.
It's a bit of a student-based book. One of the things I'm going to be doing in the next year is undertaking a qualification in evolutionary psychology. So evolutionary psychology is a relatively new science, but an ancient one, really. It states that human behavior, the majority of human behavior, is dictated by evolutionary pressure, that we have developed these behavioral patterns based on the pressures of evolution over the millennia, right? That's what it states.
Sounds complex.
Well, it's fantastic. So the way we behave as people is based on thousands, if not millions of years of evolutionary pressure. And if you understand that, you are equipped so well to understand yourself and other people so well, right? So that is a fantastic book. It's a bit heavy, right? In the sense of
it looks it.
well, it's got small font. That's never good. I do prefer the big font books, to be honest. But look, I've got mindset. There's so many books that I could pick out. I'm going to hate this because you've asked me a question that as soon as we finish this episode, I'll probably lay my hands on 12 books and go, here's my 12 favorites. But look, if you want to start somewhere, evolutionary psychology, and maybe type that into Booktopia or Amazon and see what books it recommends, and maybe start by, buying yourself one or two books and just start a bit of reading. Right? Like reading is the bedrock of all personal growth, right? Reading and then action. Right?
Yeah, I was going to say that makes sense. That at the end of the day, self-awareness. How is read books, listen to podcasts, experiment. No one's going to just walk up and tell you here's what to do A, B, C. It's going to be different for every person. Ash, one question I always like to ask, especially in these sorts of topics, and I'll put it back to you too, because there's 1,000 things that we haven't touched on, but we could. I'll ask you one more question, and then I guess it can be a bit of a summary, for example. But imagine that you've obviously got 40 years of diving into this space, and you know what you know now. Is if you went back and could start again, would you have read a book earlier, have done a particular thing earlier, have done something different that you only got onto after 5, 10, 20 years? Like the old, if you could go back in time and whisper to yourself type of thing. How would you have attacked it?
Well, boy. Okay. We're definitely doing this live because this is a question without notice. Honestly, I'll answer it by saying the most important discovery I ever made, and I think anybody will ever make, that you and your identity are not the same thing. So that voice that goes 24 hours a day in your head, right? You only stop talking to yourself the day your heart stops beating, right? So for the 80 or 90 years of your life, you've constantly got this inner voice, right? And most people think that inner voice is them. What I have learned is that is not you. That is just an identity that your brain has created, right? That essentially speaks to you based on your lived experience. So what I learned and what I would encourage anybody as a starting point, and what I would whisper to myself 30, 40 years ago is, if somebody can show me the quick way to figure out that how to deal with that inner voice, would have accelerated everything enormously, because so many weeks, months, years, resources, relationships, so much of that comes and goes when you think that you're not in control of what goes on inside your head. What you actually are is you are in complete control. In fact, listeners, it's the one thing that you are in complete control of. And most people don't believe that. They think, oh, no, that's just what happens to me. I can't control it. It's actually the opposite of that. So if there was one thing I'd whisper to myself, James, it would be that is a foundational truth, and go there, explore that.
I'm not going to ask you how to do that, because that's another 4 hours. We need a longer format. We need to, adopt one of those 2-3 hour Tim Ferriss, Joe Rogan type things where that could be the extended version. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, hey, listen, listeners, if you want James and I to do a 2-hour version on inner critic and voice and how to, all that stuff, we're happy to do a 2.5 hour deep dive, but tell us in the feedback and we'll do it.
Yeah, it definitely might get a bit loose if we did it for 2 hours there, I think, Now that I've worked that into the conversation, it's back on you. Because it's such a big topic, this has been something you've been doing for, the best part of your life. So is there anything else, that you wanted to say on this topic, that a question I haven't asked but should have, something you want our listeners, who are mostly mortgage brokers and business owners, to hear, especially rounding out this productivity hack month that we've been on in May?
Yeah, well, look, the cold hard truth is there is no shortcut, but I think we should be encouraged by that, to managing our energy, understanding ourselves, being productive, being happy, being the best version of ourselves, being a peak performer. How you build that for yourself and how you then take that to the people around you, really what we're talking about here. And energy is part of it. Self-awareness is part of it. Understanding how humans behave and why we behave the way we behave. I mean, I have said this so many times to people I know. If there's one thing you should learn, it's why human beings behave the way they do. 99% of it is built in. 1% of it they consciously control. That would be the place to start. But to go back to your question, so there is no shortcut. However, there are ways to speed it up and accelerate it. And I really, really encourage all of our listeners, like, you've got a great opportunity. You're in a great industry where you're helping people, you solve problems, you make money for yourself, you build a business. What a fantastic industry that we're in, right? And you just happen to be dealing with an organization, Broker Ideas Group, who exists for the sole purpose of you becoming the best version of yourself and building the best business possible. So you've got the best of both worlds, an expert in human behavior and peak performance, as well as an expert in systems and process and maximization of productivity, all in the one place. What am I saying? Get on the phone, pick it up and talk to us, right? Because you want the shortcut. Well, you can do it the long way, which is stay on your own and try and figure it out. And take a few of these hacks, yes, or speed it up by working with us.
Sounds good. I like speed, as in speeding things up. Let's not go there. There's been too many of those double meanings. This has been a great episode, and as we've said throughout this month, it's a very deep topic. We've scratched the surface. We've given you some hacks. We've started to get you excited, hopefully, about productivity and peak performance, and even diving into bits of mental fitness and all sorts of stuff, and that it really does drive, you drive your business, and so you want to be in peak productivity. So as with always, pick up the phone, as Ash said. We clearly have been around for a while, because we both still say pick up the phone. Nobody picks up the phone. It's like, I can't say, so push the button and book a chat. It's like, no, just pick up the phone. No, and it's not even a phone call. You'll be having a Zoom call with one of our team who's awesome and could probably give you some insights and help you and work out if we can work together or not. So maybe we need to come up with a new 2024 version of pick up the phone. Maybe it's just press the button. I don't know.
I could have said send us a fax. That would have really embarrassed me. But no, how about this? Slide into our DMs. There you go.
There you go. Now you're showing some, now you're showing your hipness, and I'm showing my not hipness by saying the word hipness. And we're still recording, listeners. So this episode has definitely gone off the rails. But yeah, slide into the DMs, give us a buzz, and let's see if we can get you up into peak performance and get some business results too.
Yeah, we're serious about this. We love having fun and a bit of banter, but honestly, we love this. We love helping people. Take what you need out of this. If you want to work with us, get on the phone, but take some action in this direction, one way or another.
Indeed, take action. Listeners, hopefully you've enjoyed this episode and all of these episodes this month. There's 180 plus of them back in the archives. There'll be some things in there there'll be gold lurking in there no matter what stage of your business you're at. So go back through the archives. Also, we'll have a new topic next month that we'll be talking about. So stay tuned for next week. New episode, new topic, something good, no doubt. So until then, stay cool. And Ash, I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Same time next week.
Same bat station, same bat time. See you next week, Jones.
Done deal. See everybody.